Hey guys, welcome to Is It Legit podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that's very near and dear to us because we both live we live in Washington and we live close to Seattle, and we have seen Seattle really morph into something that we really don't like. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this, people who don't live in Seattle. And the question really is if you look at places in like LA, San Francisco, Portland, or even Seattle, as you guys have heard, and it really is not, it's as bad as people think. Why do we keep voting in the same people when we're getting worse and worse results, right? Why are we allowing this rampant drug use, this homelessness to continue? And we're supposedly spending a lot of federal dollars into all of this. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Again, John is here with me. And John, let's talk about it. So question number one. Again, the kind of big picture is we're spending billions of dollars, okay, on this homelessness issue. And yet we're seeing the visible crisis get worse and worse. And a little background on myself, guys. I've actually, I've had a nonprofit helping homeless people for over 10 years. And so I have some insights to talk about. But what do you think is actually going on? Why is there visible disorder even after spending literally billions of dollars into this homeless issue?
Yeah, so this problem, let's talk about some data. So, like Peter mentioned, we've spent on the West Coast up to billions of dollars every single year, and we still have visible homeless issues. Washington State, in particular, so our state in particular has 31,554 people experiencing homelessness in 2024, which is a 12.5 increase from 2023. And now we have the third highest homeless population in the U.S. after California and New York, which is a shocking and not so nice statistic. However, and we were just talking off camera about this, in 2025, so last year, 158,791 people were in emergency shelters or unhoused. So maybe not technically homeless on the street, but in shelters. I mean, to put that into context, 158,000 people is the criteria that we use when we look for commercial properties, right? To be in a certain city. But we have that in shelters, which is crazy. I mean, if you add that and the actual homeless population together, that's almost 200,000 people. Portland's, still terrible in this regard. The Tri-County area had 12,000 people experiencing homelessness in 2025, which is a 61% increase in 2023.
That's unbelievable.
That is a crazy, crazy statistic. So Peter, I mean, what do you think is in the heart of this problem? Is it that we are just too permissive? Is it that, what is the issue?
Yeah, again, a subject near and dear to my heart. And of course, we haven't even talked about California. California is the worst out of all of these, right? I was doing some research on this, and California is really in bad state. And it's crazy because I walk around California. I walk around like LA or San Francisco, and it's a zoo, dude. Like, it's so bad. It feels unsafe. I feel unsafe, and I'm not really. I've been around homeless people for a very long time, and not only that, we're seeing feces. I mean, I remember one time I went to Portland. This was shortly after COVID, but there was literally feces everywhere. There's poop everywhere. Yeah. Homeless people all around the ground. I'm not talking like in like a corner somewhere next to a store typically. I'm talking everywhere, like on the street, just out there in the open. And of course, we see people on drugs, fentanyl, right? And these are very powerful drugs. And so it's just very, very sad to see, the like dystopia, right, that you see in some of these Western states. And so, okay, so we're spending we're going to talk about the spending, right? Because we're spending so much money on homelessness. And I believe First of all, I believe there is some fraud going on. I actually do believe that actually is happening. It's not only Minnesota or Minneapolis, right? I believe a lot of fraud is going on with, this effort to help homelessness, which needs to be investigated immediately. And then secondly, I believe that we are trying, we're putting a Band-Aid over an infected wound. I understand people's sentiments. Listen, I understand the heart to help people who are experiencing homelessness. But to just give away a bunch of stuff is not the answer, okay? There shouldn't be 158,000 people in shelters. That's a systematic problem. So I've read a book called When Helping Hurts. It was one of the most transforming. It's actually how my ministry was based upon. And the book was about how you have to avoid paternalism, which is doing things for people in which they can do themselves. And by giving, so the thing is, like, you think a good parent is just giving, like your kids, just doing everything for them, right? You literally put the spoon to their mouth, you chew for them, you spit into their mouth, you know what I mean? Like they fall, you pick them up, all that stuff, right? That is not developmentally good for the child or for a person. And that's kind of how our philosophy was. See, the problem is when you give someone, someone who has had trauma, someone who has, mental issues, mental disorders, which I believe get exacerbated being on the streets, to be honest. When you give this person clothing, shelter, you give this person really everything the body needs, right? I know what happens in the streets, okay? I've talked to them. A lot of them are very candid and very real with me. A lot of those guys, they use any extra money on either alcohol or on drugs.
Sure. Yep.
And that's what it is. And they believe that they can sustain a lifestyle of just living on the street because you get so much handouts that no one wants to change. So the reason why I know this is because I believe it was 2016. What's crazy is they just made, I don't know if you remember, but there was a huge headlines about how they put billions of dollars into helping homelessness. Okay, billions of dollars. And what's funny is I was on the streets back then, like not me personally, but I was like actually out there trying to help these people, trying to get people's mindsets to change. I used to do training modules, on personal development and to get people off the street. And I actually had a good following of people. It was great, honestly. We were making some incredible progress. People wanted to talk to us. People wanted to change. The problem was in 2016, they made this massive injections. Homelessness doubled. I'm talking like almost 100% increase in homelessness after they made this big injection. People did not want to talk to me. They did not want to change. They didn't even want to go free. I'll give you free lunch. Let's just grab lunch. They didn't even want to talk to me, right? As much as charismatic I tried to be, no one would want to change. And the big realization there, and I saw visibly drugs were getting way worse. It was getting dangerous because I had a bunch of volunteers come with me. We went to the heart of the homelessness. And I just saw things get so much worse. And that's where it was very eye-opening that just giving free handouts is not going to solve the issue. You have to solve, very important things. For example, like mental health. If you have mental health issues, you're not going to be a functioning person in society. The other problem is we have to solve this drug problem. There was so much drugs going into Washington State, call it through immigration, whatever it is. I don't really know, but we have to solve that problem because if you don't, no one's going to get better when drugs are just free and, anyone can use it. And what are cops doing? And this has always been my question. You're clearly doing something illegal, right? I've seen people shoot up in front of me almost once a month. I could see people visibly doing drugs in front of me. And even weed, it was legal then, or illegal then, right? But people just do drugs and no problem. So anyway, this is kind of what I saw. I believe that the solution is, again, we need to have more AA, more NA. We have to have mental health institutions. People really need to change. We also need to stop enabling. I actually believe in doing less resources. We have to stop enabling people from living off of a system, right? They have to, I think there should be aid. If you are willing to work, you can eat. We'll help you, but you have to be willing to work. You have to be willing to do something, anything, manual labor. Because if you're not willing to work, you don't eat and you die. And I know that sounds really like cold, but that's just the way the world has always worked. Never in society, right? Like, has it been like, hey, here's hand-me-downs, even though you don't contribute to society. Never. So, long-winded answer, but I'm very passionate about this. That's my answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Hawaii, and one of the things that we always knew was that there were different areas and different parks even. There was a park called Ala Park that we all knew when we said that word, it was like a homeless park, like in the middle of Chinatown and downtown.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I actually saw it.
So it's something that I've always known about. It's something that, as a kid, you wonder, like even my kids now, we talk about homelessness, and when you stop on the intersection and there's a guy who's asking for dollars, and it's like you feel bad, and then me and my wife have to talk them through, like, well, why is that person on the street? Why does he look like that? Or whatever. And I also do think that it comes down to let's kind of close this topic by, because this is one of the pillars of the issues in the West Coast cities, right? So homelessness is driven by three main factors: lack of affordable housing, that's for sure; addiction to drugs or gambling or even abuse, and untreated mental health issues. And so it's not just poverty alone. So I think that maybe humanizes the problem, but then again, the issue on why we can spend so much money, I mean, again, hundreds of millions to billions of dollars in certain states and districts, is cities are adding shelters and services, but without the mandatory treatment, for example, maybe therapy or like actual medical treatment on, maybe they're trying to mask some pain, right? I know a lot of people who even had legitimate surgeries, back surgeries, knee surgeries, whatever, and got just addicted to pain pills, and they don't have counseling to be able to wean off of that, for example. Like I had a quick story is I remember I was coming out of a shoulder surgery, and they were looking at me weird because they asked me, do you want some pain pills? And I said, I don't really need pain pills because I think I'll be okay. And they're like, no, I think you need pain pills. And they literally prescribed me. So this is oxycodone, which is the narcotic pain pill.
Very powerful drug.
They gave me literally 100 oxycodone pills, 100. Because they probably looked at me, I'm a bigger guy, stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm okay. Like I've been through the surgery before, so I knew what I was getting myself into. I even denied what's called a nerve block to kind of numb everything because I wanted to feel and be aware so I don't bang it, stuff like that. But they just gave it to me as super nonchalantly, right?
Probably incentives to do that.
Yeah,
Honestly.
That's a whole nother topic, right? What hospitals and doctors get incentivized by drug reps and pharmaceutical reps. So anyway, it's the giving, but without the treatment, the enforcement, and the coordinated housing. Maybe it should be mandatory to have a shelter, but also with screening, for example.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Kids at school, they have counselors. So you fight with a friend in the yard. Well, you go to your teacher, then your counselor, then maybe your principal, right? So it's clear that as we dive into the other issues, which have a lot to do with budgeting, that more money spent doesn't equal a problem solved. So the next thing we can talk about is budget shortfalls. I know we talked about this briefly. So the other question is, why does Washington, Oregon, and California keep running into budget shortfalls, even after repeated tax hikes and bigger government. So, Peter, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, let's actually go through some statistics. Washington is facing a $5.1 billion operating shortfall in 2025 to 2027. Oregon has a $372.7 million gap from 2025 to 2027. California has the biggest problem. Governor Newsom, 2026 to 2027, literally a year worth of budget. The proposal shows a $21 billion general fund shortfall. Massive, right? So here's the thing. A lot of these states are broke, right? Now, there's a lot of things we could talk about that, right? It's like there's theories, but at least from my point of view right now is that, listen, you can't just keep, first of all, fraud. I feel like there's a lot of fraud going on, governments inside governments and, a lot of people taking advantage of the governments. Again, when you're in places where it's free handouts, here's a bunch of free stuff. Of course, people are probably taking advantage of the system. I'm sure you've heard of people who had Social Security, right? Of dead people. And people are collecting on Social Security and like Medicare and like all this stuff on dead people, dude. So that's one. But then also like being in a place where it sounds so good. As, again, like I think these guys are being voted in because it sounds so good to be like, hey, here's a bunch of free stuff. I know you're struggling, and that already strikes such a huge chord. Here's a bunch of free stuff. Let's tax the rich. The problem is the rich leave, right? As we've been seeing, and we did a podcast on it, where the rich leave. And then secondly, it's not like this money is going to like coming from nowhere. That's our money, dude. Our property taxes. That's the taxes that we pay. It's going to these programs that clearly don't work, like the homelessness issue, right? That's a clear thing where, like I said, it's not a problem with them having a bunch of free stuff. It's the system, the way to fix the homelessness does not work. Okay. One funny thing about I just want to say a quick statistic about Korea, because you go to Korea and dude, you will rarely see a homeless person. You see that guy with the no legs. It's fake. A lot of these guys, right? No, it is. It's like a well-known thing, right?
No, well, for context, there's a lot of like train stations and subway stations, and there's people that hang out in these hallways, and there's people that are like professional, homeless people that
beggars, yeah,
beggars, and it's like a thing where you have these like slightly too long short pants that kind of make you look like you have no legs. And I'm sure some of them, maybe they're in the war or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, I just laugh because I remember that from my childhood.
Yeah. Okay, so this is 2024 statistic, right? Dude, in the whole nation of Korea, the whole nation, there's 12,000 people, 12,725 people annually that are experiencing homelessness. Okay, that's since 2021. So the last 3 years, it's been down 11.6%. Okay, again, just for context, there's 158,000 people in shelters and 31,554 people experiencing homelessness in just the state of Washington, and it's been increasing. Versus Korea, I think the big difference is that Koreans believe that if you don't work, you starve. This is normal, man. Like, you don't work, you starve. Like, there's no like fallback. You get a bunch of free stuff from the government. There's none of that stuff because we're not going to incentivize you to stay homeless. Okay, you gotta contribute to society. Of course, our GDP, is not growing as much as we would because we're incentivizing people not to work. Same thing with Medicare and all that. Like, honestly, there's a lot of incentives not to work, okay? But getting to the actual issue, the budget. So at the end of the day, like we're like we have a budget shortfall. We're kicking out the millionaires, right? We're charging people for a that's a proposal to charge people for a vacancy tax. So our millionaires, people who bring jobs, are leaving, right? We're giving a bunch of free stuff to homeless people, which obviously doesn't work and it demands a lot more money. So we're mismanaging the funds. But I will say Washington State is broke, and there's plenty of cities right now that are broke. And and then who are the other cities that are also broke? New York, right? And you see what's happening in New York. There's a lot of homeless people in New York. There's probably number one, or second to maybe California, right? And so you're seeing it clearly not working. The system doesn't work. So I guess my question and my frustration is like, why do they keep doing it? Why do they keep allowing this? This stuff doesn't work.
This is true. This is true.
So this is like why it boggles my mind, and we've tried this for so many years. One of the things I will say is like Spellman was the last. This guy named John Spellman was elected in 1981. He was the last Republican governor. Every other governor since 1985 is when he ended, has been Democrat, dude. And we've been seeing Washington has so much potential. It's a port city. It's like great. But we've seen just Washington turn into, crap, in the last 2 decades. Like I barely go to Washington because I don't want to go there. It's dangerous.
Or Seattle, right? Like the
Seattle. So yeah, what do you think? Why is this happening?
I mean, I've heard that even from the friends that I have that grew up here. Like I have friends that say, "Oh, I don't go to Seattle," and for me, Seattle was like, the Emerald City. Sleepless in Seattle. Like I'm from Hawaii, so I'm looking at Seattle like through a different lens. And I remember when I first got here in 2008, I remember taking the Orca bus because I didn't have a car or anything, and I would just go to the library and just walk around, and it felt like a real city, like a West Coast New York or whatever you call it. But the other thing before, because I do want to talk about why it keeps happening, but I think the other last thing we want to mention is public drug use. So this, unfortunately, I think ties into the policies that our government continues to uphold. But public drug use keeps on showing up, even when it's illegal and clearly destructive, right? So we also have an addiction problem to these pharmaceuticals, or just heroin, or drugs. Addiction turns it into a public health and enforcement challenge at the same time. Nationally, 70.5 million people ages 12 plus have used illegal drugs or misused prescriptions in the last year. So this goes back to my surgery story, right? I mean, 25% of Americans all across the states ages 12 plus have used illegal drugs or misused prescriptions. I've heard of stories where kids have had access to their parents' prescriptions, right, to pain pills. Or, again, the injury and the surgeries, and coming out of that, people get addicted and kind of ruin their lives. I've heard of that, over and over again. And there's some thought that even this addiction, overdose and addiction crises are so visible that they directly shape voting behavior, which may tie in to the reason why we have more Democratic, candidates, right? So anyway, we keep doing decriminalization. We do enforcement, or we even talked about, the big topic was the defunding the police. I mean,
that's insane.
One of the craziest, most ridiculous, personally, things that I've ever heard. Like the idea that you think society is so insulated that we can do without police officers and women, and like that's I don't think people understand the reason why we are so safe is because of those people. Like I've heard so many, look, I've gotten a lot of traffic tickets, right? I joke around about this with you and my other friends, but sure, I've had a lot of opportunities to meet police officers, not in the best light, but I also know real police officers doing real jobs that are terrible. Like, having to deal with literal feces. Like I've had a good friend back home. He became a police officer and we all knew each other through church. And every time we would meet, he would tell me some crazy story. And the last story I remember hearing from him was that he was in Waikiki, which is a famous beach in Hawaii. And a homeless guy came up to him and he literally like threw his poo at him.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, these are real stories of real people dealing with real things. So I think, maybe we can just end with, so we talked about homelessness, we talked about budgets, we talked about drug use, which I think they're all tied together. But how do we not elect the same leaders and policies, and how do we stop this from happening? But what do you think is happening now?
It's happening because a lot. So from the data that I've read, people are following personalities. They don't really understand the policies. They don't understand how that affects the economy. They're not economists, right? People are just following people. Oh, Katie Wilson seems like she's a nice gal, right? She's kind, she's compassionate, right? That's why she got voted in, dude. It's not because, she really understands economy. She has no background in economics or anything like that. She just, she gave what people want to hear. But of course, what people want to hear is not what's necessarily good for the public. And so I think that's, from what I'm reading, that's why these guys keep getting voted in. And of course, there could be, conspiratorial things like campaigns, the Soros is funding a lot of this, behind the scenes, and, giving a lot of publicity to get more votes, right? Because if you have a whole bunch of money, you can change the mindsets of people. Then of course, it's not that hard to get voted in. So, but yeah, I mean, I like that. I believe that's what is happening, and it's like we're so strong. Again, regardless whether you're red or blue, I will say we're very strong in the blue. Very democratic, and it's so hard for anybody. I know people who have tried. It's so hard to infiltrate that. They're so stuck in their ways. And at the end of the day, it's like, it's not working, right? It's only getting worse. It's getting worse, right? It doesn't even, like California. I used to love California. I don't like going over there. It's worse than Seattle, in my opinion. So, but we should end there because I do have to go. But yeah, any final thoughts before we end?
I think, like you said, identity politics is very strong. We do tend to follow personalities, and it is difficult when you come home from work and you have kids and you have responsibilities and you have to clean the house and do this, to actually sit down and think about politics. It's much easier to consume and to be told what to do or what to think. And to be honest, I do that too. I don't have time to sit down and think about every little thing and extrapolate that to the ends of the earth. But at the same time, as you're voting, as you're making choices, it should be informed. As you vote every few years for different people and different offices and, different levels of state and federal government, I think politics is where this is the best advice that I've heard from my stepdad from way back when in the day, because I was asking him questions like this. And he said, you just have to follow the money. Follow the money. It will take you to where the truth is. You see where the campaign contributions are coming from. You see where these homeless, like in California, these homeless program directors are getting paid like $250,000 to $500,000 a year. It's kind of like paying, it's like you're incentivizing the wrong outcome, right? It's like, if I sell a house for more money, I should get paid more and not less. It's like, it's not the right idea. So I think if you really follow the money and kind of follow where, if you just calmly take the approach of, okay, well, is this policy actually going to turn out to be like this? You can study history. You can look at other examples from different countries or states or what have you. But I think awareness is key, and understanding that just increasing the budget, increasing the taxes is not necessarily the way out, because we're clearly still having budgeting issues, even though our revenues are high and taxes are being proposed. So you gotta vote with your hands, and to vote, I think you need to be aware. So.
Sounds good. Well, thank you guys for watching. We're gonna have more content like this. Again, we're from the greater Seattle area, and we see it, live. And so we're happy to report on what's going on. Please like and subscribe for more of this kind of content, and we'll see you guys on the next video.